London's always been a fashionable, ever-changing sort of place. A leader, not a follower. But in recent years, the pace of change has become frenetic. From bendy buses, to chains of sushi bars, to giant Ferris wheels. It can almost feel the old face of London is being erased before our very eyes. But if you know where to look, there are still some nooks and crannies where the old ways are alive and kicking. Today, I'm meeting some Londoners of the old school. A traditional undertaker in the East End. An upmarket hatter in the West End. And an Italian cafe owner in Soho. But first up, I'm on home turf. To meet Alf Masterson, one of the last rag and bone men in the capital. Where I live in North London, Alf is a well-loved figure. But there's one thing I've always wanted to know. What on earth is he shouting? What are you shouting there, Alf?
I don't know. Supposed to be old rag, old bones, isn't it? I remember the old rag and bones. They used to sell rags and bones because they melted them down, see? They melted them down.
Into what?
Into soap or oil. That's how the rag and bone started.
And how did you get started in this game, Alf?
Well, I had a day off of school and the old boy up the top was a rag and bone man and he asked me to come and he took me out to Whetstone with the barrow and I liked it and he gave me 6 shillings. That's 30 pence nowadays. So I got hooked on it. I used to go with him Saturdays then. But my father never liked it because he was a painter and decorator. He said it's a lazy man's life. It's not a lazy man's life, I tell you. There's no engine in this barrow, you know. Prams I've had, barrows, horse and carts, lorries. I like this the best. I'm getting a bit old now, I'm the horse. Morning. How are you, all right?
So when you started out, there must have been a lot more rag and bone men than there are today.
Oh, round Holloway there was about 30 of us.
Yeah?
And yeah, vans, pushchairs, barrows, horses and cars.
Rag and bone men used to be a familiar sight on the streets of London. Long before the days of eBay and car boot sales, they were the early champions of recycling. In those days, scrap metal was the staple of the trade. But nowadays, survivors like Alf have to be a bit more choosy.
Cast iron, all the scrap yards are closed. There's only one in Hackney. Even coppers are to get rid of. I like a bit of gold and silver, or antiques. Thank you. Morning. Are you all right?
And is there still a living to be made out of this?
Nowadays, it's easy to get stuff, but hard to sell. Well, this week I've earned £2 yesterday, nothing Monday. It's going dead, but I could earn maybe £100 a day. You never can tell, you know, while them wheels are turning, you've got a chance.
I've seen you a lot down my road, Alf. How many miles do you do a day?
I do about 12 to 15. I've walked around the world about 3 or 4 times. If you work it out, 49 years, 60 to 80 mile a week.
A world tour of Kentish and Camden Town.
Yeah. My best area is Regent's Park, where all the high society is.
I don't know, you got a chest of drawers out of me,
Yeah, no, it's lovely. I've got a nice chest of drawers.
And what over the years have been some of your better days?
Well, I had a turtle one day, a great big turtle, and I sold it for a £5. It was mad. I was only novel. I've had a coffin.
What's a Chinese restaurant?
I had a coffin and the dog was in it, and I went past the pub, and a bloke come out and he thought he was seeing things. The dog's head was popping out of the coffin.
And what's the dog's name, Alf?
The dog's name's Lucky. And the first day I took him out, I got the barrow stripped, stole everything outside the bookies.
So not so lucky.
The next day I lost my wallet, but now the tide's turned, he is bringing me luck.
Is he?
My other one was more lucky, a Pip. I had another one for 16 years.
I remember Pip.
I took him to the West End and he found £150. I took him several times later, he never found a penny.
What have we got on the barrow today?
Well, this morning I got the around the world in 80 days.
Hold on, there's a customer.
So I'll give you a hat free, yeah? Have a hat free. Now. Make this. Yeah, have a hat.
On the house.
On the house.
On the
Pardon? Abbey National.
Yes.
You got £10 out of Abbey National?
No, you.
He gave me 5.
Yes.
Your husband did.
That's it, I know.
Well, now you're all right. I haven't charged you no
Good,
interest.
good,
Yeah?
good. See ya.
See you later.
And where's the chair from?
That a lady in Jeffrey Street gave me that. She was a Harley Street doctor, and she's moved to Covent Garden now. That was her father's, a bishop in Wales. Wish I had 6 of them. I wouldn't have to work for a while. Do you want one?
What's that? Is that? Oh, what's that?
Oh yeah, that's for the toilet. If you want to go, you can have it.
A lovely sound.
It's for when you go to the toilet. Pop while you know, toilet roll. Things people throw away.
The things people buy.
Oh yeah. Years ago, everything used to go. I couldn't get home, you know, chest of drawer, tables, chairs. The people are not buying like they used to, you know. Now there's recycling going around. They collect cardboard.
No good to you, is it, Alf? The recycling
No,
business,
that's
mate?
against me. When they start getting the skips and putting furniture in the skips, I'll be finished. I'll have to retire. Because they collect, up at Regent's Park, they collect boots, shoes, books, paper, dresses, clothes. There's about 20 different skips recycling.
And can you imagine yourself not doing this?
My ambition in life is to get a few more bob, I ain't got a lot yet, and buy a little boat and go sail away on the boat.
Good luck, Alf, because it's a long way to the ocean from the Regent's Park Canal. In the old days, a man like Alf would have had a horse to draw his cart, but there are still a few businesses that put their faith in horsepower. Once upon a time, horse-drawn funerals were the only way to go. Nowadays, you'd be forgiven for thinking they're just a preserve of old-school gangsters. But you'd be wrong. One family firm in the East End is still harnessing its horses and offering Londoners the chance of an old-fashioned farewell. T. Cribb and Sons of Beckton was founded by Thomas Cribb in the 1880s. Today, it's run by his great-grandson, John Harris. What a handsome pair of horses. Absolutely lovely, aren't they?
Yeah, these are Frisian horses. They come from the northern part of Holland. They were known in the trade as Belgian blacks. It was a bit of a misnomer. It was only for the fact that they used to be transported overland out of Holland to Antwerp and then come across in barges. In fact, they used to come into the Elephant and Castle. There was a big horse repository there. And once a month there was a big horse sale, and it was just all black horses, just for the funeral trade.
And that eventually died out, and why was that?
Cars were taken over anyway, so motorised transport was taking it away from the horses anyway. They would have lasted a lot longer had it not been for the war, because obviously coming over from Holland, German occupation of Holland, the horses were used in the war effort, a lot of meat on a horse as well, so they suffered as a breed. So they just stopped coming over in any numbers, so it was just really the supply of horses that killed it.
And beautifully decorated, if you don't mind me saying, yes.
Yep, I mean, these velvets on the side are actually great-grandfathers. I mean, these are, what, 90 years old now.
And whose idea in your family was it to bring the horses back?
I'd like to say it was a great business idea, but it wasn't. There was an elderly lady, and she'd sort of said before she went, when I go, I want a horse and cart, and this was the way she described it. And when she did go, which was back in '73, we had to look around then to get this covered. Well, we'd already done a little bit of history, and we managed to get hold of a chappie who, George Mossman, he used to supply all the horses and the carriages for the old Hammer horror films. Elegant.
The terrific scene as they're racing up towards the old...
Well, we tried to keep it toned down a bit, but the carriage itself, because it, used in film work, it didn't have to be brilliant, because it doesn't take close inspection. But the problem was, the next year we was asked to do 2 more, the next year we was asked to do 4 more. And so, very quickly, we thought, well, we've got to get this sorted out properly. We found this particular hearse. We was looking all over the country, and we found it quite locally in the end. It's in very poor state of repair. And so what you see now took a lot of time and effort to bring back, but that's been pretty well restored as it was.
That's beautiful, isn't it? It's a beautiful thing. So John, could you tell me a little bit about the family history of this business?
Yeah, we was started in 1881 by my great-grandfather, standing outside the shop there in Rathbone Street.
Looking very handsome in his top hat, yeah.
As indeed.
I'm particularly liking this, always in readiness for the removal of bodies from hospitals and asylums on the shortest notice.
Yeah, they didn't leave a lot. I mean, as you can see just by the front of that, I mean, that's just one big advert. I mean, there's no yellow pages, so
there's
it's all down on the front of the shop.
There's no subtlety there at all.
Not at all.
John's worked hard to keep alive the traditions of his great-grandfather, but there are other aspects of the modern business which old Thomas Cribb might find a little harder to recognise.
Where we are now, we have Hindu Sikh washrooms, we can cope with Filipino vigils, Ghanaian vigils, we have a Buddhist prayer room where they can burn tokens for the next life, which, yeah, you wouldn't have needed much in grandfather's days.
Just a black overcoat and a top hat?
Yeah, that would have been adequate.
You got all them outfits, so you're rushing in and out of them rooms?
No, don't normally get dressed up for it. No, black's fine. Black's fine. Although we have had to change in some of our colour attitudes. I mean, we've now supplying white horses and white hearses, because in the Far East, white is the colour of mourning as opposed to black. So, yeah, we've had to do some fairly dramatic changes. But no, me personally, I don't normally get dressed up. Well, not that I'd admit to, anyway.
Coming up next, I'll be going up west to visit a fabulously old-fashioned hat shop. That's the one for me. Londoners have always loved their hats, but nowadays you're more likely to see a Burberry baseball cap than you are a bowler or a boater. Unfortunately, if you ask me. But some of us still prefer a rather more refined old-school hat. This is Bates on Jermyn Street. Founded more than a century ago, this shop is one of the few remaining gentlemen's hatters in the capital, and a mecca for the serious hat lover. You can get everything here, from a flat cap to a fez. Well, Mr. Boucher, what a marvellous shop you got yourself here. In fact, some years ago, I bought my first bowler hat in this very establishment.
Really? How long ago was that then?
It was probably 5 years ago.
Oh, I just missed you then. I've been here about 20 years.
Have you? And how long has this shop been open?
We believe since 1902.
And what would the hat business have been like in 1902? Was it a pretty busy old scene in here?
Oh, certainly. I mean, as you're probably aware, if you see the old photographs, everybody's got some form of headwear on, be it a hat or a cap. Yeah, I mean, it was a busy time, the prime time, you know.
But again, even not that long ago, I can remember around Liverpool Street Station and all that, you would see hundreds and hundreds of blokes in pinstripe suits and bowler hats, and that was probably only, I don't know, the early 70s.
Oh, yeah, you do still see a few of them, but they are a rarity. They're a dying breed, unfortunately.
Very much unfortunate.
It is.
Every
very
upstanding
absolutely.
Britishman of a certain age should go out and buy himself a bowler hat.
Quite agree.
And who have we got up here? We've got a cat in a hat.
Yeah, it was a famous Binks. It was a feral cat that just walked into the shop back in 1921. It was sort of adopted by the people who were here at the time, and it actually used to sit around the shop as you see it there with the top hat and the cigarette in its mouth.
You see what I'm saying? Even cats of a certain generation walked around wearing top hats.
Absolutely.
I seem to recall all those years ago when I bought a bowler hat here that there was some instrument, a torture that you put on your head that measured your head.
That's right, a conformature.
Ah, what a marvellous name.
It is, isn't it? I don't know where the name derived from. Well, obviously because it formed the shape of your head.
Fantastic.
It was.
What a beautiful thing it is too.
Put a card in there, and then you push the pins in, and then it would print out the actual shape of the person's head in miniature.
I think it's a rather fine looking thing. I think you could wear this with a certain amount of pride like that, couldn't you? What do you think?
Very good.
Yeah? Marvellous.
Sold.
How much?
This might be of interest to you.
As you can see from this lovely old catalogue, yesterday's customers were spoilt for choice.
As well.
Got the bowler, the Homburg.
That's right.
We've got some prices here. Look, hold on. The silk hat, I presume that's a top hat, is it?
That's right, yes.
25 shillings. Sounds a bit pricey to me. Still, what would a top hat go for nowadays?
Black one's about £300.
Well, there you go. I'll take the one for 25.
Yeah, I thought you might.
He looks rather...
Very dapper, isn't it?
Dashing.
Nice silk topper there.
Mm.
In fact, the person modelling all the hats there was actually a former employee of the company.
How marvellous. It's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. just across Piccadilly from here is another small business that's also one of the last of its kind, an Italian-run cafe, the New Piccadilly. With the glut of new coffee shops and chains springing up all over the capital streets, it can sometimes feel like coffee is a completely modern invention. But cafe culture goes way back. The revolution began in the 1950s with the arrival of the Italian coffee house. Today you have to look pretty hard to find the reminders of this post-war Italian invasion, but some gems survive, like this place, the New Piccadilly on Denman Street in Soho, owned and run by Lorenzo Marioni, who's been working here since the early 50s. It's a magnet for cafe aficionados such as writer Adrian Maddox.
The New Piccadilly is really this, the St Paul's Cathedral of cafes. What I love about it so much is just all the detailing left from that Festival of Britain era. You've got the amazing UFO light fittings, you've got the astounding colourful range of laminates, the sort of grey, the reds, the yellows. You've got the amazing horseshoe menu with, all the dishes on, which has been there for centuries. You've got the classic calf chair, and that's a sort of big feature of these kind of places, not the bolt-down plastic type. And finally, you've got the New Piccadilly menu itself, a design classic and a sort of graphic masterpiece in its own right, and pretty well the same display of dishes it's had since, the early 50s, and all of them every bit as good today as they were then.
Why do you feel that modern person has a difficulty appreciating this kind of...
I think in modern Britain there's a terrible stigma still after half a century attached with the 50s. That was the point of the Festival of Britain, why it was mounted, to get over the austerity, the hideous austerity and privation of the war years. And I think anything that still looks like that has still got a terrible kind of resonance for people, and they feel this, for a lot of younger people, they feel this sort of terrible sort of negative energy and want to back off. But for me, it's absolutely fundamental. It's a huge attractor, and it kind of just sucks me into these places.
And apart from the obvious aesthetic joy of a place like this, what do you feel the importance these places played in the lives of people in the 1950s?
Places, cafes were absolutely fundamental. The whole secret history of the part they played in the kind of renaissance of art, film, fashion, the avant-garde, but even sex and crime is absolutely fundamental. Without cafes, no skiffle. Without skiffle, no Lennon McCartney, no rock and roll. That's just one strand. I mean, you got Christine Keeler hanging around in cafes in Marylebone. Whole sexual subculture spawned there. Quentin Crisp hanging around cafes in Charlotte Street, just up the road. A whole history of sort of gay culture there, all alone. You've got various writers galore in Cafe Torino, artists, architects, the whole damn story of everything that was great about modern Britain is kind of in these places. For 50 years, the Italian families who came over here and kind of broke open Britain, just thawed it, got through the permafrost of life. It was just magnificent, and the story needs to be told.
And who better to tell it than Lorenzo himself? Lorenzo, when did you first come to London?
I remember it well. It was 17th of November 1949. I called myself a Georgian because of that. King George VI was on the throne.
So there was quite an Italian community even when you came?
Oh yes, there was a long-established network of Italians and so on.
And what did your family do when they got here?
My father started buying the street, actually. Sounds flash, but there you go.
So there was more than one establishment in the family?
Yeah,
here,
we ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, but 6 in the street.
At the end of the war, lots of Italian families settled in London, and many of them ended up in Soho. They brought a welcome splash of colour and style to a dour post-war capital, and Italian coffee bars became the place to be seen.
In the early 50s or something, fashion, music, everything went Italian. It was amazing, almost if it was socially engineered.
So Lorenzo, could you describe for us what it would look like in here on a bustling afternoon in the 50s?
Packed, full up. There was the market traders, barrow boys, the hard boy villains, the spivs, office workers, shoppers, of course. And it went until 1 o'clock in the morning, queues outside and so on. To have to have a plate of spaghetti with chips. I mean, people now that might go, oh my God, all those carbohydrates, this, that, and the other. But people were hungry. After the war, people were hungry. But people of today don't understand that people were always walking around with that niggardly hunger. They were still rationing and so on. And the cafes used to do a great sort of business. Great businesses, mama and papa businesses thrived and so on, which is totally different now.
Why have the places like this gone into a kind of demise, would you say?
Ah, easy, really. It's just high overheads, rents, rates from the councils. And of course there's a limit to what you can actually charge people for this sort of environment and product. Now you get the big money boys, no names mentioned of course, they'll just swamp an area. I mean, they're so big. These people want to be intergalactic, and that's how it is. And a little one-off sort of mum and papa setup, you just can't compete. And now this is the last one, really. Last of the Mohican, catering Mohican, and I mean, I should be retired, sort of thing. You know, pottering around in the shed at the bottom of the garden, really, but. I'm still here. I want to be the guy that switches the lights off. Eventually it's going to be redeveloped, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, this, that and the other. I want to be the guy, symbolically, to sort of switch the lights off, walk off and never look back.
Tastes change all the time, and that's not necessarily an altogether bad thing, but maybe we should sit back and appreciate the way things used to be before we say goodbye to them forever. Next time on Disappearing London, I'll be dusting off my dance shoes at a fabulous South London ballroom, getting hot and steamy with a couple of lovely ladies, going underground to solve the mystery of London's disappearing loos, and going to the movies, 30s style.